We're going to talk some Seahawks here. Rob Staten joins us right now. He's got a website, Seahawksdraftblog.com. Always love talking NFL draft with him. Also like talking some Seahawks with him. But let me start with this real quickly before we get to the state of the Seahawks. We got news today that Russell Wilson has been benched and that it looks like his run in Denver is over. Rob, was this a stroke of perfection from the Seattle Seahawks trading Russell Wilson, getting the return that they got, and knowing that, look, there's no other way to look at it. He was a failure in Denver.
Yes, the Seattle Seahawks will feel very, very happy about how this has all played out. To get the trade compensation that they got for Russell Wilson. And let's not forget, in his final year in Seattle, he had injuries, he had missed games. It was coming to a natural end of his time in Seattle. It was right for him to move on. It was right for the Seahawks to move on at that point. If they'd have delayed it any further, they wouldn't have got the trade compensation that they have. They've been able to parlay that into players like Devin Witherspoon, who've been really good for them, and a number of other young players as well. So, yeah, the Seahawks, they'll be doing they'll be getting the cigars out. They may have a little bit of champagne today about how this has worked out. It's a little bit sad that it's gone this way for Russell Wilson, I have to admit, because, from a Seahawks perspective, he was fantastic for a number of years. But purely in terms of who won the trade, the Seahawks won the trade.
Huge game in Seattle this weekend, Rob, with the Pittsburgh 8-7 invading Seattle to take on the Seahawks, who are 8-7. Currently, after upsetting Philadelphia on Monday Night Football and stealing that game in Tennessee, they hold the 7th seed in the NFC. They are a 3.5-point favorite against the Steelers. Does their recent success inspire you to try to send Mike Tomlin back to 500 after 16 games?
Well, not really. I mean, they've not played that well, in these last two games. That you have to give them credit. When they needed a 90-plus yard drive at the end, those things aren't easy. Whether it was Drew Lock or Geno Smith, they managed to get the job done. But the run defense stinks. The defense in general stinks. It's taken them a long time to work out that, hey, DK Metcalf against James Bradbury, that might be a good matchup to utilize against Philadelphia. The same against Tennessee. All of Tennessee's secondary isn't playing in the game. Took them until the fourth quarter to really work things out in the passing game. So confidence levels, not that high. But then you watch the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know if you've seen that meme that you see online sometimes, and it's Spider-Man pointing at himself. That is the Seahawks and the Steelers this season. And someone's going to be 9-7 off the back of this. Someone's going to be 8-8, and they both kind of feel pretty similar.
Well, I think you answered my next question, but I'll ask it anyways. Rob Staten joining us here on VSiN Primetime. So the Steelers come to Seattle this week. Then the Seahawks go to Arizona the final week of the season. Right now, the Seahawks are minus 330 to make the playoffs, so a pretty decent-sized favorite to make it to the postseason, Rob. But if they do make the postseason, and you're getting a rematch maybe of the Philadelphia game that we just witnessed in Seattle, or if you play Detroit, is this a Seattle team that could make noise? We talk about on the AFC side, well, if Buffalo gets in, they could make noise. The Rams could make noise. Where's your confidence level on the Seahawks potentially winning a game in the postseason?
Pretty high. But I think it's pretty high for Detroit, for Dallas, for Philly, for Tampa Bay, for the Rams. You essentially have the San Francisco 49ers and everybody else. And we shouldn't forget that. Look, the Niners had a very ugly performance against the Ravens. They are still far and away the best team in the NFC. And everybody else is kind of jumbling around looking for any kind of consistency. The Seahawks have already beaten Detroit in Detroit. And they kind of have their number. They've beaten them back-to-back seasons in a very similar way on the road both times. Pete Carroll has never lost to the Eagles. They beat them a couple of weeks ago. The Seahawks played the Cowboys close on Thursday Night Football a few weeks ago. Could easily have won that game. They're not very good against the Rams. They have a terrible record against the Rams. They're 0-5 against Kyle Shanahan and the Niners in the last 5 games. So those are the 2 games that they would not fancy. The rest, any of the other teams in this NFC, they'll fancy the chances. But the thing is that whoever's playing the Seahawks will fancy the chances as well. It's a wide open NFC, in my opinion, to see who is going to end up playing the Niners in the NFC Championship game.
Let's go to the other side of the bracket, the AFC. Very impressive win for Baltimore as Lamar Jackson moves to 20-1 in games against NFC teams. They clearly control their path to the bye in the 1 seed. They take on Miami this weekend. If it's not the Ravens who come out of the AFC, who is it?
It's a great question, because you would automatically just go, well, who's the next best team? And that kind of looks like Miami, but then Miami threw a game away against the Tennessee Titans a couple of weeks ago. And then you just can't help but look at the Browns and wonder, how is this happening? You know, what's going on there? How is Joe Flacco suddenly back in the league and, you know, not squandering the defense that the Browns have? And they haven't got Nick Chubb, and they've lost other players to injury as well. You have to say, Kevin Stefanski's done a great job there. And when it gets to the playoffs, if you have a great defense, the Browns do. If you have an X-factor pass rusher, the Browns do. If you can run the ball and you can punch a team in the face, let's not forget, the Browns have had close games against some really good teams. They've beaten the San Francisco 49ers just like the Baltimore Ravens. Do you know what? If there was going to be one team that could go on a bit of a surprise run, and it does feel like the kind of NFL season where there may be a team who has a surprise run. The quality of the overall product that we've seen in the NFL this year hasn't been amazing. Why can't the Browns make an improbable run in the playoffs? They're kind of built to do it, and we've seen it once with Joe Flacco. Admittedly, it was a long, long time ago. But once he did get hot in the playoffs. I don't think it's necessarily going to happen again. But who knows? What a story that would be.
Really has been. Rob, before we let you run, right now, across the board, Seattle sits as a 3.5-point favorite against the Pittsburgh Steelers, a total of 41-41.5. What's your feel on what we're going to see Sunday there with Seattle and Pittsburgh?
Seattle's strength is their offensive weapons. Pittsburgh's strength is a really good defense. Seattle's weakness is a very expensive, underperforming defense. Pittsburgh's weakness is an offense with major question marks, especially at quarterback with Mason Rudolph set to start again. So it's kind of, who do you trust the most? Do you trust TJ Watt and that defensive front seven for the Steelers to make the plays, to force a couple of turnovers that is going to decide this game? Or do you trust Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Tyler Lockett to make the plays to enable the Seahawks to win? That's really, for me, what it's going to come down to. And I think, look, Geno Smith in the last game played what I would call a perfect Geno Smith game. No turnover-worthy plays, big drives at the end. The fact that this is in Seattle makes me want to lean towards the offensive side and maybe the Seahawks coming out on top in this game. But Seattle's run defense has been very bad. If the Steelers can play really strong defense, TJ Watt can have some big plays, and if they can run the ball, to move the ball and put points on the board, then the Steelers will have a great chance. But it's going to be really interesting to see, is it Seattle's offense or Pittsburgh's defense that comes out on top? Because that's the strength versus strength matchup.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.